Hello and welcome to our weekly presentation of what's happening in the crypto and blockchain as a space. I'm Manisha Gupta. This is here exactly where we get you all the news, views, and analysis within the sector. And the last quarter or the last financial year clearly has seen loads of news, reactions. There have been some shutdowns in sense of businesses, and we have seen a lot of talent go out of the country as well. But what does the new quarter or the new financial year has in space or store? To discuss all of that, we are now joined by Srinath Sridharan. Srinath, hi, good to have you. Thank you so much for your time. And I would first request a summarization of how the past year has been. There has been so much of macro that has impacted the space, and then of course the within happenings as well.
Sure, I think the macro on the larger picture has been digital public goods as equally, I think, treated along with infrastructure. So we saw a lot of capex coming through the infrastructure sector, roads, ports, railways, lots of railway activity. And in the digital public goods, we have had similar ones. The government itself is moving its entire machinery on blockchain, right? I mean, one of the few countries globally to have a blockchain policy, a national policy for blockchain. That happened. Inflation has been a very, very tough one. We have seen this tussle between, at least what we perceive as a tussle between RBI and the government. But clearly, they look like we'll be on the same page. Inflation has been tough, but it forced for a old rule to be enforced. The RBI had sent a formal communication how they will tackle it. Taxation, not much last financial year. The new union budget that was proposed will not see much slab. But some of these bummers that we see once in a while, taxing the debt mutual fund, I think are just policy distractions. So we could do without it completely. Banking, not much. While we thought we will get away with some digital bank concept that NITI proposed, I don't think RBI is going to budge on digital banking at all for some time until they scale it up. Yesterday, we saw SEBI propose the ESG framework, or that they will announce the ESG framework. That should be good for the green and sustainable finance in long term for India. We don't have a green ESG framework at all. But the other regulator, financial regulator, insurance sector, to me, it's a little scary one that they want to dilute the equity norms to get in more newer entities. That's a scary one because insurance sector, you want them to outlive all of us, which means that they need far stronger patient capital. Closer home, again on the technology and the digital finance front, we saw RBI pilot the CBDC. And I think one of the challenges with the cryptocurrency industry, and I'm not talking about crypto, I'm talking about the cryptocurrency, is for
Yeah.
the first time a regulator themselves are showcasing their technical prowess in getting a CBDC done. And even the retail pilot is on. The challenges are how will we solve for UPI? I mean, UPI has been the lowest cost unit transaction possible, and it's almost on with KYC, mobile to mobile. What will CBDC do more than what UPI does as a question mark? Uh,
Mm.
this investment has been a challenge, and I think we are going to keep watching. Globally, there are trends. Will government decide to be in the business of governance or in the business of business? And I think that's a long conversation all of us have been asking. One hit and miss, I think a more a miss is public health budgets. We are still very, very low. We have not been able to attract investments into that space. And considering that this is a year of elections, 9 states going for election and the union election next year, uh, what else can we do in public health? And we have now seen the worries about will COVID come back in different variant or something. We haven't seemed to have learned our lessons. Broad bucket, this is what we saw the last year. Next year forward, I don't think we're going to see many new policies because of election year. If at all
Right.
anything, it will be very, very micro one. And that's where we are.
Mm. Oh, well, absolutely. I want to, a very exhaustive listing that really, Srinath, about what's really happened in the last financial year. But I want to bring your attention to blockchain right now. And as you mentioned, a lot of governments, a lot of states are looking at it. There are a lot of companies as well that continue to fund, startups and companies within India as well. What is your sense on how the last year has been only for crypto and blockchain, where we've seen taxes come in, where we've seen participation go down, volumes as well go down?
See, I think the participation has been increasing in the retail end of it. And if I speak about blockchain as a whole, it's a trust-based system, right? So both there is public and private participation. There have been investments going in. And from the government side, they've also included it in every single e-governance platform, be it supply chain, be it healthcare, be it Aadhaar. So that's a big, let's say, vote of confidence from the government in adopting blockchains. And if you look at the World Economic Forum recent report, their estimate is 10% of global GDP will be stored on blockchain by 2025. And that's a big number. Even if we discount it by 50%, 5% of global data storage in one single technology is revolutionary. If I come back home, micro, for example, we've already started using, the government has started using it for vendor management, supply chain management, smarter contracts. Skilling initiatives have been started by NASCOM with the government. And in the financial services, which is a big mover of money and which pilots and accelerates projects, uh, today blockchains are completely in. And more importantly, we are also seeing blockchain as a subject of education and skilling in our colleges. I mean, it's not only getting those things done, and but also using it. If you look at Andhra Pradesh, they've already piloted blockchain for land records. If it is
Right.
successful, it can be scaled up across the country. Telangana is using it for supply chain management. Hospital chains are already using it for records, and if it is successful, I think Ayushman Bharat will be able to scale it up.
Mm.
Insurance, lots of things. But yes, there are some concerns which I think going forward, the green folks, the green Baton folks would ask, uh, how much of energy consumption is blockchain going to use and what kind of solutions do we have for it? And blockchain is really scalable in the retail format. When you scale up with billions of people using it and multiple billions of transactions happening on a daily basis, can blockchain be time effective? I mean, today, if you want to use a cryptocurrency and exchange it for, let's say, a cup of coffee, it takes about average of 11 minutes to pay for one cup of coffee, which is far slower than a barista making that coffee and giving you, right? So, how are we going to bring blockchain to retail aspect while the larger aspect of B2B is fine, B2C? And I think here the other question that we need to ask for India is interoperability of blockchain.
Right.
Different blockchain networks will be there as we expand our financial and fiscal networks globally,
Mm.
are all of us going to be speaking on the same protocols? And I think the good news is the government of India has the blockchain policy, Niti Aayog has the policy. We
Right.
have now this year budget create announced for blockchain centers of excellence, which is a great news.
Absolutely. So, Srinath, as you said, there is a lot of work being done when it comes to blockchain. There are private and public companies looking at that. The government also is in favor of this. We've seen so many ministers. I mean, you and me were in a summit together where they very categorically said that yes, this is the way to go ahead. As far as regulations come, that's a bit that's going slightly slower. That is because they haven't been able to differentiate or come out of the shadow of crypto as we've seen. I mean, that is the was one of the word of caution there. How do you see then policymakers go forward, and do you see that happen within this new financial year coming in?
See, I think clearly answer is yes. I mean, blockchain is decentralized very, very clearly. And the only concern that the regulators have is it on a private node or a public node?
Mm.
And they don't want it to be private at all, which means that it has to be auditable, it has to be scalable, it has to be interoperable, which is their biggest fear about cryptocurrency. And I think if we overstep that, I think the government has made peace with blockchain. The government of India itself is the largest user of blockchain clearly, and there is no turning back from it. But let's look at some of the other countries. The government of Georgia uses it. They've moved all their land registration to blockchain-based land registration. I mean, one might argue it's a very small country and small number of data, but it showcases the legality of such frameworks. The government of West Virginia in the U.S. is already testing blockchain-based voting system for their military personnel who are not on duty outside the country. So, will Indian government ever adopt e-voting and will we move to blockchain? Probably yes, at some point in time. Tax collections are already partially on blockchain, but can we make it far, far robust and granular? I think the answer is yes. Healthcare answer is yes. So anything that is on digital public infrastructure today has a backbone of blockchain. So there's no turning back on that.
I
And
get
which is
that.
what
You
gives
know,
confidence to private investors to pump in money.
oh, well, absolutely. And since you spoke about the global markets, I mean, there are instances on how a big global diamond company is now utilizing blockchain to, for following up on where each diamond moves there. And then we've had some steel companies get into this as well. How soon before you see other countries or other companies get into this as well? Because this is as transparent as it gets. Would you say businesses are ready for one, the technology, and two, the transparency or the credibility that it brings along?
So I think very clearly, even today, if you look at India, banks are already using blockchain. I mean, banks for their transactions, the volume of transactions, it is tested really robustly well. The infrastructure companies, mining companies are using it for the supply chain. Some of the conglomerates are started testing it for supply chain because where they want to execute smart contracts, where they want audit trail, where they want to also showcase, more importantly, the ESG framework is going to ask them for audit trail. They're going to ask for sustainability reports. If you're a conglomerate having operations in multiple nations, your regulatory framework in each nation wants disclosure at the granular level. Blockchain permits you to do that, which means the record is immutable. Once it is, let's say, triggered somewhere, it can't be erased. It can't be edited out for saving the changing the audit trail. So some of those are very important for from the ESG framework, and that is why the good corporates are adopting, though it is slightly expensive in the initial phase. It won't save money overnight because it's an investment of capex and in retraining people. If you remember, 20 years ago, there was a huge furor about ERP, SAP, every company saying worth its salt, and manufacturing said we will adopt SAP. It costs money and lots of training. And that's the same thing I see in blockchain as well. Give it under 5 years, I don't think we can escape blockchain. For all you know, a recording like this might be on blockchain with somebody recording something and it's on its chain.
Well, absolutely. So, maybe putting you in a corner with this one, but how would you rank India with what it's done with blockchain as of now? And how would you rank India in the global markets on how we're adopting it?
See, I think blockchain in terms of technology adoption, I would rank ourselves probably the highest because ability to take it to
Highest.
digital public goods highest is completely there. In terms of policy cynicism, before we buy something, we oscillate. We are like the pendulum in a clock. We keep going left to right completely because of I think trust issues between the innovators, the developers, and the adopting communities. Crypto, for example, what we've seen, the very simple fact that blockchain initiated from Bitcoin in 2007-8 and evolved is what where the sense of skepticism started with. And it's very similar to the skepticism the government had about Aadhaar as a digital public. But to give them credit, once they get out of that worries or trust issues, they completely embrace it fully. And I think so. I would rate it very, very high, completely.
All right, that's good to know. Just coming back to the fact that we are getting into a new year right now, and there are so many expectations. The G20 presidency was a big event by itself, ongoing yet, and the expectations that we would have had something from there. But would you say that all conversations, when you look at Web3 or blockchain, just do get shadowed by cryptocurrencies?
It is absolutely, and I think if you look at it, I'm being a little pessimistic here. Uh, we delayed the crypto conversation. We posted it. India as a country, we said we'll discuss it in G20. If you look at G20 countries, how many of them are actually talking about crypto? Everybody is, I think, shooting from each other's shoulder and not solving for it yet. Whereas if you look at some of the G20 nations, they've been having crypto exchanges for the last 10 years, successful, and billions of dollars. If you look at theoretical construct of crypto, or whether it's an asset or a currency, it is a hedge for inflation because of the limited supply of cryptos. So theoretically, economists should argue that it is one of the safe inflation manager. But I don't think it's going to ever going to fly. Crypto system will continue for long, long, long time. Uh,
Okay. So, if there were two or three things, let's call it three things in the next financial year that you expect in this space, what would really that be?
So I think healthcare, we definitely need to scale up our e-healthcare system in India. While we are doing a lot of things on Ayushman Bharat, we've not been able to integrate hospitals. We've not been able to make it as popular as, let's say, an Aadhaar or a COVID. And here is an opportunity to scale this up. So will we use it? And that's where I initially voiced my sense of little skepticism that our healthcare budgets have been very low. So how do we bring that up? Two is I think it's a great move. If you remember last year, we kind of dismantled the entire market mechanism for agricultural produce, and we wanted it to the farmers to benefit. Crypto can actually do that far better. It is still inefficient, but can we do it using crypto? Sorry, not crypto or blockchain? I think the
Blockchain.
answer is yes. Some of the agriculture startups are already working with the Ministry of Agriculture in trying to do help there. So I think that's a big, big scalable one because we can actually then give the right price for the produce to the farmers directly. Even today, we hear of unfortunate incidents of farmer suicides, potato being
Yeah.
sold for 2 rupees and 3 rupees a kilo. and I think that we need to solve for because we are still in agrarian economy. That's important. Three, I think the government will very voluntarily embrace blockchain for all its procurement. The amount of strategic procurement that they will do across, it can solve for delayed payments by the government himself, right? MSME, we keep saying that the government is delaying payments to SME and MSME. Can this solve for it? I think blockchain can solve for it. Very, very clear. Imagine if I were a MSME sitting in a small town, producing something and supplying it somewhere. The moment
Mm.
I've got the delivery challan and my GST is paid, that's my counter for payment can start from there, and automatically Treasury can say as long as there is no quality concerns within those 30 or 45 days, payment has to be made. Then I can remove the bureaucracy completely. I don't need three babus to sign off those papers. Uh, so if there is an intent, they can solve for this, and I think blockchain can solve for a lot of delayed payments, MSME issues.
Well, absolutely. Three sectors clearly screaming for technology is, as you said, healthcare and agriculture's supply chain, and of course the procurement from the government. I'll wind down this conversation with just one more question. The next year perhaps could bring CBDCs into mainstream, is what the industry is talking about. Retail CBDCs under pilot now, and we've seen a lot of work, a lot of statements coming from that one. Where do you see that in this year?
So again, I'm not too sure about what are we going to use the CBDC in the retail space for. We have fantastically everybody using their mobile phone for UPI linked to a bank account and everything is solved. CBDC today has one fundamental challenge which it has to solve for. If you
Mm.
remember the typical bus conversation, Bhaiya chutta do. I don't have money change for
Oh,
your ticket. CBDC has the same chutta problem. I will have to load my wallet with the relevant currencies, whereas UPI doesn't have the problem. I load my 100 rupees, I can pay 87 somebody. In
right.
CBDC, I'll have to load so many 1 rupees, so many 5 rupees, so many 10 rupees, so many 550 rupee, and all those problems. So the chutta problem, CBDC has the chutta problem. How will they solve for it? And what will they do better than UPI? UPI is auditable, UPI is trackable. If at all that is the intent, while the regulator has said we don't want to get into private space of citizens, I think a lot of us will be cynical about such a statement. Assuming that the odd regulators in the government want audit trail for monies, UPI still provides it. What will CBDC do? Not too sure. The chutta problem has to be solved. And I think it's a matter of under 1 year that we will know once the pilot has been done.
Oh, well, absolutely. Srinath, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about a whole host of things on what's happened in the last year and what can be expected in the year coming, the sectors that can use blockchain, the technology, the regulations are anticipated, and of course, on what can we expect from CBDCs as well. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining
Thank you,
us.
Manisha. Thank you. Bye.